we're lost. Really lost.
Tis dangerous out there in space. Trust no one.
I'll get you home. We'll make a partnership.
You're a Jedi.
Okay, welcome everyone to a long time ago. This is our Skeleton Crew review show. Joining myself and Martin on the adventure this week is our old friend Matt, aka Matt's Collection, and making his debut YouTube appearance and first appearance on our channel, of course, Mr. Delvian Seek. Welcome to the channel, or Andy, as we now know. How are you?
Thanks
both?
very much for.
You good?
Thanks for the invite.
You all right?
Doing great. How about you guys?
Yeah, good. Yeah, all good. Yeah. Right. Before we get into episode 4, then, Delvian, what are your thoughts on the series so far? Are you enjoying it?
I am really enjoying this series.
Yeah.
I'm actually a little bit surprised how much I'm enjoying this series, because I know it's aimed at kids, but there's enough in there for kids and there's enough in there for adults, and it's bringing me back to a lot of sort of stuff that I enjoyed as a kid. So yeah, overall, I'm loving it so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, how about yourself?
Thoroughly enjoying the show. And,
Yeah.
you know, I like the story. It's a lot of fun. The kids, the child actors are doing a great job.
I'd agree, yeah.
There's a lot of new stuff, but there's also so many deep cuts to, like, just little nods to, like, older stuff, like even old Star Wars stuff. I think it was like one shot in like the last episode or the episode 4 when they get to that space station, where the pirates den, and there's like the McCory concept for the Millennium Falcons out there and stuff like. I mean, it's just been fantastic, and I'm here for all of that. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, good. So Martin has it about 7.5 out of 10 after last week. I'm still here with 8 out of 10.
Yeah. So my average is, I think, 7.5 out of 10 thus far, and you stuck with 8, haven't you, so far all the way through?
Yeah. Andy, where do you have it?
It's probably around about 8.
8.
Yeah, it's a solid 8, sort of like so far. I'll get into what I think about this episode compared to some of the others, but quite solid.
Yeah, Matt.
No, I'm 8.5. I mean, it's been a lot of fun, and like I said, it's a fun show, and I'm really liking the plot, and there's a lot of stuff, I'm kind of curious on where they're going with it, and so yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Good. Yep. Into this episode then. Don't let us spoil it for you. If you're worried about spoilers, make sure you come back after watching the episode. This was episode 4, titled Can't Remember No At-In, which we hear quite a few times in this, don't we? It was probably another fairly short episode. I think it was around 35 minutes runtime. Were you hoping for something a bit longer in this one, Delvian?
It could have been a bit longer, but actually, there's a little bit what I wish they'd sort of like focused a little bit more on this episode, and maybe we'll get onto that a little bit later. But overall, no, it was a good amount of time. Yeah.
And did you enjoy it?
I did. So I enjoyed this episode. I think there was part of me at first that thought, is this as strong as some of the other ones? Because on the surface, you kind of think, actually, it didn't much happen in this episode. There wasn't a great deal of action sort of going on, but actually there was a lot going on in the background in this episode. There's a lot of sort of like clues being dropped, and there's a lot of character development in this episode. So I'd kind of expect that at this stage in the series, actually. So overall, I quite enjoyed it. Not as action-packed as some of the others, but it's still pretty good. It's moving along at a good pace.
Yeah, I think the pace has sort of slowed a little bit in this particular episode. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think, I wish it was a little bit longer. I would have liked another, 10 minutes or so, because they did cover a lot in this episode, and there's a lot of, some, deep plot points that I think, giving them a little more time, give it a little more weight, I think we're going to see more of this. They'll flesh it all out in the later episodes, but it would have been nice to have just a few more minutes in this episode to kind of flesh out some of the stuff that we saw. Give it a little, bit.
I think one of the things, sorry to jump in, but I think one of the things that I wish we'd seen a bit more of was if Jude Law's character in this episode, because he gets captured by the sort of the other side, and then he disappears and doesn't reappear to the end. And I was quite actually going, well, what happened to you in that time? I would have quite liked to have seen that fleshed out a little bit.
Yeah,
I kind of like the. That being said, just to be a little contrarian on it, I kind of like the surprise of him just showing up when he did, and he's like, hey, no, I've fixed this and I brought back, kind of, you think about, we have like a Hatfields and McCoys going on, except they're called the Hattons and the Troikas, but it's basically that's all they're doing is fighting for fighting's sake at this point. It's just kind of what they've done, and it's for him to, and even Neil's trying to figure out a way to stop the cycle, and then in a way, I mean, even for just a little bit. John or Captain Sparrow, whatever his actual name is. He comes in and gives a little respite to the cycle, which was kind of nice.
Yeah. Martyn, what were your thoughts on this one?
It was a solid episode. Without giving too much away, it's probably my least favorite so far, I would say, but that's not in any way saying it was bad. I definitely agree with Delvin's points, but I also agree with Matt, the fact that 10 minutes more to flesh some certain things out would have been a lot better for me. It was a strange episode in a way, because it was complete polar opposite of anything we'd seen in the previous 3 episodes. Again, isn't a bad thing. But at the same time, there was lots of little Star Wars things in there. And again, we'll probably get into it more a bit later, but just a quick example. There were, the EOP, and they looked a little bit like the EOP we've seen before, but slightly different. And then we had that battle tank, which looked like something we'd seen before, but slightly different. So you can see perhaps where things haven't evolved in time, like it has done in the galaxy that we know of. Yeah, exactly.
My first thought when I saw that thing.
Yeah, it hasn't evolved very much because obviously they're still living in the past and they have the old technology. So I found that was quite interesting, something that I picked up on. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a fantastic episode.
No, I'd agree. I thought it was decent, but same as you, I wouldn't say this was my favourite of the released episodes so far, because it did sort of slow down a little bit. And it was one of those, I think we've... Can you liken it to that one in season 1 of Mandalorian where, they go to the farmers and almost like that, but they're training the kids up a little bit. And I don't know, it was one of those which you've kind of seen the story before. Not that that's a bad thing. It wasn't my favorite, but I didn't hate it. Don't get me wrong. It still had some enjoyable moments in it. So yeah. So the opening scene then, I don't know how many times you guys watched this. Have you all just managed the once? Or
I managed a second to watch this morning.
Yeah. So I've watched it twice. The first time I watched it, in the opening scene, I didn't actually notice the barrier generators were all broken on this planet as they were approaching what they thought was Atin. It was only the second time through that I actually saw that. So, did you think that maybe they were going back to their home world, but something had already happened, or I don't know?
No, I mean, I saw there was like that blue mist cloud that surrounds the planet. I mean, it was dissipating, it was disappearing. So instantly you got the sense this isn't the same planet, because you could see some of the stars. So you could tell it was different, sort of like straight away.
Yeah, I was saying, it ended when I finished watching episode 3. When they took off, I was like, wow, they're getting home pretty quick. And then today, last night when I'm watching the episode and they're pulling up they're coming to the planet. Even the kids are like, oh, they're seeing everything. And everything looks familiar, but you look out at this, like you said, you look out and the nebula's kind of dissipating in the orbital platforms. They were, they obviously weren't functional. So it's like, okay, this isn't quite right. And so it's the neat thing about it though is like, you kind of, it's one of those, you really had to look to catch that at first, and then once they landed on the planet, you already knew right away it was different.
Yeah.
So, but it was cool. I like the way they did it.
Yeah. So now we sort of know that there are these. Well, I mean, they hinted upon it a little bit in the third episode about all the different planets that were sort of lost in time or were hidden. Now we know that they're all almost made the same.
Yeah,
so
practically identical planets, and then
yeah,
it's interesting. So I think that's something they're going to flesh out more in other episodes, because as we get onto it, it's like they've got coordinates for at least one more of the planets now. So I think what we're going to see for the rest of the season is they're going to these different planets to try to find the coordinates for that at that's their goal.
But I'm starting to think that maybe sort of where everyone was perhaps not too happy about the design, the look of the planet, it being too sort of like not Star Warsy enough. But I think that might actually be a plot choice now, because they are so identical, and so it kind of got me thinking, sort of like, actually, does the school on their home planet, does that have like a big gun emplacement on the top of it as well?
Yeah, I know. I thought the same thing. It's like. They have a school that has a giant gun hidden. I almost guarantee it's there.
Yeah.
I think spot on. I think initially when I saw those satellite platforms above the planet before they landed, they reminded me of and we spoke before we started about this. They're these orbital weapon platforms that Palpatine uses in Battlefront 2, the game, where he destroys a bunch of planets which are vital for the New Republic if they wanted to get on in the future. And at first I thought, oh, maybe these are the planets that he used Operation Cinder on, but I don't think so. I think it's more along what Matt was saying. But the other thing that, and again, I can't take credit for this because I did read this, and as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, actually, the thought that is it the Great Administrator, I think they have on each planet? Is that it's actually a droid. The droids are actually running the planet, not the human beings, and the whoever this Grand Administrator is, or whatever he's called, is actually like some sort of supercomputer that's up in that tower, or a droid or something, like Wizard of Oz or something like that.
No, I think it's a person, but it's like that's the person that knows what's really going on, and everybody else, and they run the droids. I think there is a person at the head of it all.
Right.
I don't think it's a computer, because I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong.
It might have started as a person, but when they go into the sort of Akron sort of like sort of place, you can see all the pillars, and at the top there looks as though there's a big device there that looks like could be a supercomputer or something. So and the way that the droids sort of like are behaving and sort of like reacting, I'm starting to lean towards the droid theory a little bit, and it's something they haven't done in Star Wars sort of like yet.
So with that being said, then what do we make of the statue, the headless statue? Would that be something to do with
King No Head?
King No Head. Yeah.
I'm going right with what's Wim's idea. I think that's perfect.
Yeah. This isn't the person that oversees all the planets. It just maybe the Great Administrator then on that.
Well, you go back to what Kim was saying, or what they've said about all these there were these hidden planets, and all of them have been destroyed, but At-Aten was lost. Like nobody knows where it is. And these planets, obviously, if you're looking at this one, something happened on there, and then the whole planet devolved into some sort of civil war. To the point where they've been fighting for so long and don't even really know anything else. And so it's so that's the whole, which flag do you fly? Are you a Hatton or a Troika? And they're not doing anything on the outside of that planet, and nobody's going to go there because there's nothing worth having because they've destroyed it all. And I think you're going to see that on other planets. There's going to be some other, they could have all fallen in different ways. But yeah, I think there's something happened there. You know, maybe the people there found out what the true purpose of the planet was, and they fought against it and, you know, brought it down. And then, you know, where the people on At-Aten are just kind of fat, dumb, and happy, just going through their lives. You know, the droids are taking care of everything. You have this administrator in charge of everything, and they're all still working for this grand work or whatever. And that's that's something from the High Republic. It was brought up in like the first book, which is the only one I read. But they were working towards these great works, you know, they're trying to grow the Republic and make it some glorious, you know, more glorious than it already is. So, you know, and then talking about what your theory was last week, Martin, where you're talking about these are the planets that were set aside and they're kind of creating resources for the First Order, you know, kind of thing. And so ultimately the Final Order, but, you know, it's just, there's a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of questions. Right now, there's more questions than answers. And I'm okay with that because we're only 4 episodes.
Yeah, but isn't that great that we've got a mystery? I mean, I love it. And a mystery that might get solved as well, because we don't tend to get a lot of mysteries solved. And just quickly, sorry, Andy, before we go leave the statue, I was just thinking, well, that statue was kind of a false flag in my eyes that we might see more of those statues. And on the other planets, and then one of the planets will have the head remaining on it, and then we'll finally see
it's Jude Law.
It was JR. You know. so yeah, I think that was
Palpatine all along.
Yeah, the head missing from that statue was very, very deliberate, and I think there's probably going to be some payoff on that. But I mean, I'm the same. I really enjoy sort of like the build up of the mysteries and everything. My only concern, sort of like with it, is that it doesn't go down sort of like the J.J. Abrams sort of sequel where you just do loads of mysteries. And I mean, I really like the build up, but there is going to need to be sort of like a decent payoff for it. If all you're going to do is sort of like that build up constantly.
I think you'll get that because it's not some mystery box thing. These are very deliberate, you know, and luckily you don't see Jar Jar Abrams in the credits, so you know we have hope.
Yeah, I think the makers of the show, I was listening to an interview they did, and they were saying that this series is self-contained, so they made it as if there was going to be nothing else. So that to me hopefully means by the end of the season we'll have a definitive answer with maybe a few loose ends if they wanted to come back for a second season. But I think by all the sounds that I've heard, it's going to be, you know, a self-contained story, which is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to. Yeah.
What I think is interesting is the Empire has already been to that planet because the Hatan troops, they were wearing Mud Trooper helmets. A lot of them were wearing Mud Trooper helmets. So at some point, the Empire has been there to that planet. So.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? That kind of that gives me more thought about that theory from last week that I might be along the right tracks. You know, there might be something that's gone on there. Maybe even Cinder did happen there. You know, who knows? But
because I mean, Darth Sidious knew. I mean, if the plan you were talking about last week, Martin, if that theory is true. You know, Sidious would have known about all this stuff because he would have been one of the guys to help set it up. Or at least knew like one of his masters, maybe Plagueis or whoever's before him set this stuff up. So I mean, there's, you know, it's interesting stuff.
So as we said, they're on at Akron. Now SM33 said it reminds him of At-Aten. Before the rat in his head sort of goes back in, and then he starts smoking. So. What are we thinking? Is the rat controlling him, or is he just chewing the wires?
There's a little more to that rat than meets the eye, I think.
I think so,
So you know, he's probably like, you know, I don't think he's not like the mastermind, but I think he is kind of like, you know, think of like the parrot in Pirates of the Caribbean. It does all the talking for the guy who had his tongue cut by Mr. Cotton, you know. So it's, you know, it knows what's going on, and it's just it's kind of keeping SM33 in line and it's kind of neat. I'm enjoying it. I love that character. It's really cool.
I mean, I'm enjoying it, but I think I draw the line at Star Wars Ratatouille, to be honest.
Yeah. As long as he doesn't start cooking.
That actually, you just made me think. If that obviously Smee, sort of Smee, SM33, and the pirate ship and his old captain and crew, they obviously knew about these planets because they've all been there before, and they knew about the treasure that was on there. So maybe actually we're way overblowing the theories that we've got, and it might have had something to do with the pirates. You know, they might have set something in motion that's caused all of this devastation. But you know, when he said his captain wanted all evidence of where the treasure was buried and all of the rest of the crew killed. I mean, that was straight out of Treasure Island, wasn't it? I mean, that's you know, that's
Treasure Island and the Goonies, because look at what One-Eyed Willie did, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So sorry, Adam.
No, that's it. I can't really remember much more than that. I don't know. Right, where are we? So the kids are all taken off to the school. Then what about these scenes with the with the other sort of children that are you know, trained warriors? What did you guys make of all of that?
I mean, I thought for a kids show this episode was quite dark, in the sense that it's very post-apocalyptic. There's a lot of child soldiers and intergenerational conflict and stuff like that going on. It's quite heavy themes for a kids show, but I think it brings out sort of like a lot of the kids. They wanted to get away from their boring sort of like existence, and now they're faced with reality, and I think it's helping them sort of bring home actually the rules we had in place now were there for a reason, to keep us safe, and it's sort of brought home the reality.
Wim is having the time of his life.
Yeah.
And it's
well,
like,
he said,
they give the kids, they give the three kids, they give them guns and they go and shoot. And it's like, you know, okay, you're semi-proficient. You take point. You know, it's like, it's great. And Neil's just like, no, I don't like any of this.
Yeah.
And then he's like, but I really loved his interaction with the girl.
Yeah.
In there, you know, and he's like, well, you know, my plan is different. We don't have to do that. You know, you don't have to fight. No, nothing ever happens there. And then it's like Neil, who's his best friend, is a polar opposite, and he's just like, I just want to go home. And you know, and I loved his interaction with the girl, you know, because he's like, you know, because I mean, you can't find two more opposite people. This girl has been in war her whole life. That's all she knows. And then, but she's fascinated by this little nerdy elephant kid who's just like, nothing like, we've never had anything like this on our planet. We don't have to fight for anything. And I think there's kind of an appeal that she likes what they have. You know, you see it.
Yeah,
she
definitely.
almost wants to go with them, but she can't because her father's in charge of the Troikas. You know, she's like the heir to the Troika group. She has so many people that she depends on there and who depend on her. So she's not, you know, there's a sense of duty there for her that she won't leave. But I just love their interaction together, how they're like kind of looking at each other the other way. And then, you know, what each one has, and, you know, but then later on, I mean, you see that Neil really, when it comes down to when at the end of the episode, he really does find his courage and saves his, you know, he has the same thing. Hey, I've got, you know, KV and Wim and you know, all these, they kind of depend on me too. And he, you know, when he's in the position to save them, he does, you know, so I love that moment in this, you know, so that was a great build up for that. And you know, so it was really good. And, you know, so yeah, it was interesting to see how, you know, they just, you know, like they said, the Troikas just took these kids, gave them some, you know, a little bit of target practice, and then, okay, you go.
Yeah. Out you
we'll
go.
Follow you. I mean, that was crazy. I mean, it was almost like, hey, we got some new cannon fodder here. You know, it was like the father didn't care a whip about any of them. It was like, yeah, we'll just send that, you know. It's like in World War II, it's like, you know, they were like, if you ever watched the movie The Big Red One, then the guy who's in the squad and he narrates it, he goes like, there's a part, he's like, well, the way you find a sniper is you send a guy out in the open and see if he gets shot. they thought this up at West Point. And it's basically what they're doing with the kids are, you go out there so we can see where they're going to be shooting from. It's messed up.
I think in general, this episode as well, it was definitely a showcase for those kids' acting skills. I was impressed with all four of them. I mean, obviously Neil's the MVP of the episode because I think it focused mostly on him this episode, and I think each of the kids is going to have their own episode, if you like. But yeah, I thought I not once did I cringe at any of their acting or anything in this episode, and I have to say I really think they showed off some acting chops in this episode.
Yeah, I think Fern's character as well. I think Neil had most sort of character development, sort of like in learning stuff, but Fern did as well because I mean she's sort of chosen to be the leader. She wants to be the leader, and actually now the pressures of being a leader and the responsibilities were hitting her because it's all become real. Yeah. And I think she realizes that now. So I think there's a lot of character growth. I'm interested to see what happens with the other two kids as well, though.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, because Fern, I mean, she was. You know, she had that moment where it's like, I shouldn't, you know, what have we gotten ourselves into? And, you know, she's the one that's been stepping up the whole time. Like, you know, look, I'm the captain. I killed the captain. I'm the captain now, you know, kind of thing. And now she's just like regrets all of it. You can see that moment. She's just like, I just want to get out of here and go home. You know, even though she was like always constantly in trouble back home because she wanted to do something else.
I have a feeling though, I've forgotten the name of the girl who's got the cyborg.
KB.
I have a feeling in a future episode there might be something about a medical, because with last week's episode they're saying about she's got medical needs, and they've been dropping a few sort of like things about her perhaps not being quite right. So I have a feeling that's going to come up in a future episode.
I agree.
Yeah, for sure. Right, where were we? Sorry, I had a question in my head. I'm just trying to think what it was.
I've got a little bit of a sort of, I think there's a film homage that's sort of, or reference that's been made in this. You ever familiar with a French director called Jean-Pierre Jeunet? He did. He directed Alien Resurrection, Delicatessen, and The City of Lost Children. He's a French director. And actually, City of Lost Children is about a scientist who steals the dreams of children to sustain himself, which is not too dissimilar to some of the themes in this episode. But actually, I thought it was quite interesting because he really focuses on post-apocalyptic sort of like societies and how they function, which a lot of this was what it was about. And the Hatton group, all the accents were French. And the actor who plays the leader of the group, he was an actor in a film called Amélie, which is another film by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. So I think there's a definite nod to a bit of French filmmaking in this one, which should keep the people who think this isn't quite Star Warsy enough happy.
Yeah. So with that, they are still on at Akron. Do we think we're going to see more of these tribes or these tribal children or whatever in the next episode, or are they going to move on quite swiftly, do we think?
I think they're going to move on. I think really at the beginning of next week's episode is them dealing with SM-33. And obviously he was programmed to forget about Adam. Obviously with the program. I mean, they even talk about it in the episode. But they're going to have to fix him because they need him with the ship. And but right now he's like, you know, I'm going to rip everybody apart. You know, so luckily, you know, John was able to hit the power switch before he got to Neil. But I think they're going to deal with that, and I think then they're going to get off planet. They're going to go to one of the other planets and hope they can find another room, that room on a different planet where Adam's coordinates are not destroyed. But they have to deal with SM-33 first.
I thought it was interesting when they're in that room where sort of like they find the coordinates are missing, and he says, "I destroyed them." Smee says, "You destroyed them." That didn't look like he destroyed them. That looked like a lightsaber or something. Slash had destroyed those actually. So I think there's still a little bit more about sort of like backstory and perhaps mystery around who his old captain is.
It's got to be from a really long time ago, though. I mean, because that ship was buried on Adam, and nobody knew it was there. You know, so
I think maybe it does have a Sith / Jedi connection, because we were programmed to think about the Sith and the Jedi right from episode 1, when he kept opening that book or the iPad,
seeing the stories.
Seeing the stories of the Jedi versus the Sith, and the Jedi fighting the monsters and stuff like that. So I think you know, throwing that at us and all these other little hints, I think it would be crazy. I think I'd be a bit disappointed actually if that didn't happen. To be honest with you, but that's just me.
Yeah. So, do you think all of the different planets are going to feature in the upcoming episodes? Do you think that's kind of where they're going to take the series of sort of planet hopping until they find these coordinates?
I think so. I mean, that seems the logical choice of what would happen. You know, hey, we didn't find what we needed here, but now they're realizing all these other planets are probably the same as Aten, you know, or the same layout and everything else. So maybe if they, it's pretty obvious that hey, we can't find our answer here, we can find it. Maybe we can find it in one of these others.
Yeah.
I was trying to look at the the mural in the house that they went into to see if it was the same as the mural on the home planet, and it kind of looks the same, but it was quite dirty. My eyesight's not up to sort of spotting all the differences. It did look slightly different actually on there, so it'll be interesting when they go to other planets if they see, because I think there's something in those murals in terms of hidden meaning, just not quite sure what it is yet.
Yeah. Well, we've had a history of that before in Rebels, didn't we, with all the murals to get to the world between worlds and stuff like that. So there is a history of that sort of thing. So and I think you were dead on, Andy, when you said at the beginning when we started that these seem to be manufactured planets, don't they? Everything seems to be exactly the same except for slight differences here or there. They even said that their tower that on the planet they were on this week was slightly different to the one they had back on their home planet. So I have to say I count me intrigued, because I really am interested to know what's going to happen. So it's great.
But that aside, like, we didn't see any of Captain Brutus this week or his crew. So are we going to get an episode with just them? You know, we've seen it before that certain Star Wars series have sort of jumped between different characters and had full episodes on that one character. Are we likely to see a full episode of Captain Brutus and how they're going to track them down, or do you think it's just going to be a bit part sort of thing?
I got a feeling that they're just going to show up at one point, and they'll, with a line of dialogue, we'll figure out how they got there. So I think we're going to
brush it under the rug. Yeah,
he did say, didn't he, when they took off to call in the bounty hunters? So there's a slight possibility that we might see some bounty hunters searching for them at some point. Maybe someone
will finally show up.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows?
I think there's going to be quite a few people sort of like after this ship and these kids, though, because I mean, you've got the pirates after them, you've got the New Republic after them. I kind of feel the way that they set up the droids, sort of like on Aten, I have a feeling they might start coming after them as well, because they want to keep the secret hidden.
Yeah. There's still a lot of mysteries out there, isn't there? Do we foresee any more twists in the future then? Because I think early on, Martyn, you said that you don't see it being sort of a series with lots of twists and turns, but do you think
throwing me under the bus?
Well, you know, do you think this might sort of do you want to turn back on that statement, or?
I don't think there's going to be any massive revelations, shall we say? You know, I think we've already been quite categorically told that this isn't going to have any effect on anything that we've seen in the past or the future in any great stretch. But I'm sure, you know, as I forget if it was Andy or Matt said it, but we didn't see much of Jude Law's character, did we? And you know, the kids were loving him by the end of that episode, and I think we're all expecting him to at some point sort of turn on them and then perhaps turn back again afterwards. So that might be a kind of a twist that we're going to get, but I don't honestly see any major twists that we're going to go, oh my god, that's just blown my mind kind of stuff.
Sure,
but
yeah.
You never know. I mean, I'd like to be wrong. I'd like to be wrong on that one because I do love that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, I don't know. I kind of feel as though, I mean, if we want to go really out there on theories, it's like, how do you hide an entire planet? It's got to be more than just sort of like a little bit of a mist around it, because you're going to find. And there's part of me that's wondering, maybe it's an actual world in the world between worlds. That's how they're hiding it. That's a really out there.
That's way out there.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
I think the big reveal is what these planets were for, because they obviously were all set up with a purpose that only one of them that we know of right now seems to be trying to fulfill. So I think when we see, these, they're going to go to one of the other planets, what was it, at Ashra or something. There's the next one that they saw. In this one, I think that's the one they go to next, and they'll see that there's been a problem there as well. But it's each one's going to be getting them a little closer to actually getting home.
Yeah.
And,
but there's still a lot of mystery, and they're not. You wouldn't have thought that they'd go to each planet and there'd be tribes of people there, dystopian wastelands, if you like.
But you also got to think that, and on that, and they are, the parents are trying to find their kids too, and they're like, hey, we have to figure out a way to get to them. And so even though the administrator and the droids are trying to push back on it, but it's going to get to a point where they can't ignore it. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see another couple scenes there, because we haven't seen them since. Yeah, we haven't
beginning
seen
of the previous week.
That's it. And so I think we might see a couple glimpses there, but then push along what they're doing. We might see a scene or two. I don't think we'll see like an entire episode of the Pirates, but I'm sure we'll see a scene or two of them. And if that one guy was from, who was the guy who played Urkel? I'm waiting for him to blow something up, but like a blow up a ship by accident and go, did I do that? Or something goofy just like that. But I hope they don't do it. But I hope they resisted the temptation to do something like that. But but I think we'll see a scene or two of them or something like that. But but there will be the big twist will be the reveal of what these planets were for. I think we'll figure that part out.
Yeah, that's a good call.
It did occur to me, though, that there is potentially one character in Star Wars who might know sort of like some background on these planets, and that is Professor Huyang. Because he's been around for like tens of thousands of years. So
but he's not in the galaxy right now.
But he's not in the galaxy, potentially. But it depends. This might be set just before Ahsoka. So you never know. He might show up.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah.
It would be good,
a little bit of explaining to do if he's actually there with the timeline. I got a feeling they're leaving that alone. That's why Dave Filoni's on this as part of the producing thing, is to keep everything straight so they're not stepping on other toes. I mean, I understand, like Mark, you're saying that this is kind of a self-contained thing, but if it's really popular enough that it's not that self-contained, and they can have hints of it somewhere else, where they could bring like a season 2 of this, and they can bring in something that's going on in the galaxy, or something we see in Mandalorian Grogu, something, that's nobody chiseled that into stone kind of thing,
Yeah. So predictions for next week, then I'm assuming we're all just expecting them to get on to another planet, and well, where do we go from there, Andy?
Some of the trailers sort of like shows that obviously they find that planet with a treasure hoard. So I think they're going to go to another planet. I mean, that makes sense to me because they've got all these other pillars with all these other coordinates. It would just make sense. Yes, we've got these coordinates. Go to the other planets and see if we can pick up another clue, sort of like on that one. But I think they'll probably find more of the same, make more enemies along the way, and until we sort of like get to the climax of the series.
Yeah, Matt, have you got anything?
Yeah, we were kind of going along with this whole time. I think they're gonna resolve what's going on with SM-33. I think, and I think it'll happen fairly quick in the next episode.
Yeah.
I love the droid, so that's what I'm hoping for at least. But I think then they're gonna get back to the ship. They're gonna go to the next planet. Who knows if they run into pirates or not? And because I mean they have to be following them, trying their best to follow them. I mean, so I'm sure they went to the moon where Kim gave them the coordinates to this planet. So they're getting tracked down. I mean, these kids haven't really been quiet about it so far, and I think you're gonna see everything's going to converge by the second to last episode. But I think will we see John Nadamdi if he uses the Force again? Because I do think he's a Force. The way they had it in the episode where they escaped from the pirate base, it couldn't have been just little setup things along the way. I mean, I think he does have Force ability. He was never a Jedi. Or maybe he was a Padawan and just ran off, kind of like, and just, has been hidden for so long, and he became a pirate,
I'm really hoping there's some backstory on his character.
Yeah, I think we'll learn more.
There was a line he said when they first arrived on the planet this week, where he said, "This reminds me of my home planet." And it was quite a pointed line, so I think there's some connection between him and some of these planets as well.
Just as long as it's not supposed to be his head on the statue. That'd be a little weird.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. Okay. Right, Martin, have you got any bullet points before we get to our ratings?
I've got nothing this week, I'm afraid. But we've mentioned everything that I had in my notes, so it's quite a light week, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Andy or Matt?
Yeah, other than, I think just kind of interesting little cuts in there about I was trying to think of it. But like the way the kids are, I like the way the kids are kind of growing into this and they're figuring things out. Jude Law's character is still a huge mystery. I don't even think the name he gave the kids is his real name. I think he's like, he's very much like a Han Solo kind of he's definitely the scoundrel. He does whatever to get what he wants. He will say and do anything.
Yeah.
But I do think at some point, he is going to have the moral compass, and I don't think he will do anything to harm the kids. But there is going to be that point where it's like he's going to have to give up the treasure to save them, kind of thing. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But it's the show's a lot of fun. I think the best part about this one, as I was saying before we started recording, was is my kids. Colin and Rowan, they're 14 and 11, and they are just every week are just excited to see this show. So I mean, they are definitely the target audience for this show, and it really makes me excited to watch it too. Not just because it's new Star Wars. It's hey, the kids are really enjoying it too. So it's a lot of fun.
Definitely. Yeah, agreed. So let's give our ratings for this particular episode then. Andy, let's start with you as your first time guest.
I'm going to go 7.5 on this one.
7.5. Matt?
I'm going to go 8.5 on potential, because there's a lot of hints about stuff about like the planets and so there's definitely some stuff in there like lore wise that could be pretty cool. And, again, it was a lot of fun, and seeing the kids act in this one and really showing their chops, they did a great job. So I got to give them points for that. So I'm at 8.5.
That's fair. Yeah. Martin?
I'm going to stick with 7. I think, it was a great episode. Not, it blew my mind excellent, but, it was kind of along the same lines as last week. But as Matt's just said, the potential's massively there, and I think it's only going to get better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to go with 7.5 as well for this one. So, it's still right up there, isn't it? It's still a solid series so far. And surely that's all we can ask for.
I mean, one thing I will say about it is visually, the art direction and sort of like the production is excellent. It's actually it is really high up there in terms of some of the Star Wars content we've got. Some of the visuals from last week's episode, and actually this week's is pretty good. It has been really, really high quality.
I agree.
Agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Well, that is it then for this week. I think we've covered pretty much everything, haven't we? So, as much as Martyn tried, he couldn't persuade me to record next week on Christmas Day. So we're going to review episodes 5 and 6 on the following week. So with that, let's thank our guests for coming on. Thank you so much, Matt and
Thank
Andy.
you very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure having
Thanks
you
a lot.
here. Please go and subscribe to their channels. We'll leave the link in the description below for that. They've got some great stuff on YouTube. Andy's doesn't get enough love, so make sure you definitely go over and check his stuff out.
Fantastic channel.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who watched. Have a great Christmas, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.